And we're bringing you a special edition of Afternoon Delight this Wednesday, November 6, 2024.
A historic day in the United States. We will know in a couple of days or less who its 47th president will be. I'm Denise.
And I'm Lourd Veyra. Minangangamoy na. It looks like we're going MAGA, as in making afternoons great again. Ito po ang Afternoon Delight. Partner. Yeah.
Okay, we go straight to the interactive map of Reuters for the U.S. presidential election results. Red for Trump and blue for Harris. At kitang-kita nyo naman, namumula na
Parang suot mo kahapon.
yung mapa.
Namumula ang mapa ng Amerika. At si Trump, ito ba'y real-time? 246 electoral votes compared to Harris, where ito ba'y updated? Everyone who's saying na parang magiging close itong bilangan, close race.
That's right.
Pero it's not even close. Lalong-lalo na nung nalaman, nako, itong North Carolina nung napanalunan na ni Trump.
Oo.
Namula yung North Carolina, ang buong Howard College, na kung saan nakabase yung group, Team Kamala, nang hina sila bigla.
That's right.
Samantalang nagsiselebrate mga taga Mar-a-Lago.
Merong mga videos kanina, ang dami kong live na pinapanood, and they're showing videos of Trump supporters na nagtatalunan pa at one point. And this was like an hour ago pa nga actually. Correct. Pero again, isa sa mga inaabangan dito is yung mga key states or swing states. Isa na dyan yung Pennsylvania, right here, that has 19 electoral votes. Pero madami pa eh.
Oo. Pero ika nga nila, it ain't over till the fat lady sings or the fat man dances to YMCA. Okay, siguradong yan ang gagawin ni Trump. Ito pa, so yung Pennsylvania, pero ang trend raw mukhang not good for the Dems, the Democrats. Mukhang mamumula din daw.
Oo. Actually, right now may sinisilip ako dito sa Pennsylvania. This is according to the Associated Press. Medyo leading ang Republicans.
Yun na.
Oo. Yun din. So, crucial yan, of course, dahil isa yan sa mga inaabangan. But we will know further within the day kung saan pupunta itong election na to. Now, again, if Kamala wins, Kamala rather, will win if she gets Pennsylvania, like what we mentioned, Wisconsin, Michigan, and one congressional district in Nebraska.
Trump will win naman if he carries Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. So pareho yung NC and Georgia, mukhang check niya na yan eh. At sinasabi, whoever gets Pennsylvania's 90% chance of winning the White House.
Ang hirap kasi yung last year, di ba, nakuha ng Democrats.
Last elections.
Check that, yeah. Last election, nakuha ni Joe Biden itong Pennsylvania. But the year before that, napanalunan to ni Trump. So, tingnan natin kung saan to mag-swing this time.
And all this because of this strange thing we call the Electoral College. Napaka-weird na mekanismo sa Amerika. Maraming baffled pa rin kung bakit in place pa rin ito. At marami na mga American politicians have been calling for its abolition kasi di ba isipin mo, hindi mo pinag-uusapan halos yung California kasi alam mong blue vote naman. But you're talking about just 7 key states, and because of that, di ba? So parang bakit pa nag-popular vote? Ano pang silbi? At kung meron din palang ilang tao na magde-decide ng ultimately outcome, in essence, you're actually voting for the electors.
Yeah. And again, talking about the electoral votes for each state, isa-isahin natin, crucial ito para sa mga kandidato. Wisconsin has 10, Michigan has 15, Georgia 16, Nevada with 6, Arizona has 11, North Carolina 16, and Pennsylvania with the largest at 19. Now, unlike other countries in the world, the United States elects its president via the Electoral College. That is a vote of 538 electors, 435 House members, 100 senators, and 3 votes from the District of Columbia, otherwise known as Washington, D.C. Electors are selected by popular votes in individual states. The first presidential candidate to get 270 electoral votes the magic number, they say, wins the White House.
Opo. Okay, so parang nangyari nung 2016, ano, si Hillary got the popular vote. She won the popular vote, but si Trump won via the electoral college. At sinasabi na whoever wins the US presidential race of 2024, it will be historic. Kung si Kamala Harris, she becomes the first woman to serve as American president. Not to mention South Asian at Jamaican pa. If Donald Trump wins naman, nako, it's gonna be one of the biggest and the greatest second act or comeback stories in American history. The first former president to do so after this, in spite of convictions sa ilang mga kaso. Also the second president in U.S. history to win another White House term after a losing attempt at re-election. Before that, si Grover Cleveland ang nagano niya.
That's right.
Pero isipin mo, no? Sabi dati ni F. Scott Fitzgerald, there are no second acts in American lives. But obviously, hindi niya pa na-meet si Donald John Trump.
Okay. Bago pa natin pagpatuloy ang ating discussion about the US elections again, punta naman tayo muna sa ating chosen delight of the day in honor pa rin of the United States and yung mga snacks na associated with them. Grabe, no? Talagang bago pa ma-focus na humihiwa ka na dyan.
Kunyari ka pa eh.
Mac and cheese. Syempre, Tupperware ko nga, hinahanap
Ito
ko
kailangan ng mga Democrats, mga liberals sa Amerika. Comfort food.
Comfort food, oo nga, lumalayo na. Itong
Alam mo, ang
si
isang
Donald
subo
Trump.
ng baked mac ay parang isang yakap ng pagmamahal.
Baked Mac with with
Amoy mo ba yan?
bacon pa, oo.
Mamaya wala ng bacon to.
Grabe, huwag mo naman piliin. Oo.
Bringing home the bacon.
Tirahan mo naman kami.
Ang tindi, no? Anong sinasabi ng tungkol sa American electorate? Isipin mo, kaso, ilan ng 30 plus crimes. Lahat ng possible racist na statements, tinawag sa kanyang partido, opening act, Puerto Rico daw ay basura at lahat kung ano-ano pa. Trump is a fascist, nainggit daw siya sa mga general si Hitler. Lahat na possible na kung anong pwede mong sabihin to sabotage your presidential hopes, no?
And yet, here we are.
He grabbed America by the
There, alam nyo na yon.
heart.
Yes, dun nga, dun talaga.
Kasi lumalabas dito, ano ba, mamaya makakausap na ang ibang eksperto, no? Talagang mukhang it's the economy stupid pa rin talaga yung usapan dito, no? In spite of everything, immigration. Ang lakas-lakas ni Trump sa immigrants, my God. And as we said, former U.S. President Donald Trump is currently leading in the U.S. elections against Vice President Kamala Harris. Ano kaya ang mood sa Amerika ngayon? Tanungin natin ang wala pang tulog na senior editor natin na si Joey Francisco, reporting live from Washington, D.C. Tito Joey. Okay, kamusta ang mood dyan? Namumula-mula ang mga mapa.
Okay, teka lang. Tinignan ko kasi sinunod ko yung oras. Good morning na. From Washington, D.C., Lourd, and Denise. So I was supposed to leave itong sa center ng DC papunta dun sa Howard University, which is like 3 to 4 stops away mula nga dito sa city, yung university na yon. Kasi nandoon nga yung tinatawag na headquarters for Vice President Kamala Harris. At ina-expect after nung dinner niya kanina ay magkakaroon siya ng appearance doon o kaya ay magsasalita. Pero nag-anunsyo na kanina lang na hindi na magsasalita ngayong gabi si Vice President Kamala Harris, and will just told the crowd, sinabihan yung crowd na malamang ay bukas na magpakita at magsabi o magkaroon ng speech ang Vice Presidente. So hindi na kami tumuloy doon, so nandito na kami at ang hinintay natin ngayon dahil anytime daw, pero hindi mag-monitor, malayo ang Florida from here, pupunta, mahirap naman puntahan pa natin yun, Lourd. So hintayin na natin kung ano yung magiging laman ng magiging pahayag ni former US President Donald Trump.
Sir Joey, What can we expect today and in the coming days, I guess? Because we've been talking about this in the past few weeks na dikit yung laban. But as we look at the map right now, as we see the electoral votes coming in, nasa in favor talaga of Donald Trump. Can we see this? Can we see the elections being proclaimed or him being proclaimed as a winner anytime soon?
Anytime soon, ay naniniwala yung nakita ko may mga nagbalikan ng mga members ng international media dito sa likod ko, dito sa hotel, dito sa DC, at sila ay nagbalikan na to monitor kasi mukhang patatapos ang boxing in parang ilang oras from now. Kumbaga, Lourd and Denise, hindi na to aabot ng weekend katulad nung nangyari nung last elections between Biden and Trump.
Oo, alam mo, nung 2020 naman, Gore versus Bush, dito Joey, mga ganyang oras, ang dami pang nangyayari. Nag-concede, binawi yung concession, ang dami mga tawagan, mga abogado, etc., etc. Umabot ng 36 days. Pero Tito Joey, totoo ba na marami raw mga establishments dyan sa DC na nagre-ready na at may mga takip na raw yung mga bintana sakaling maulit yung January 6?
Well, paano ba explain? Pero I mean, hindi na mangyayari yun dahil yung merong ganong scenario na binibuild ay ang kampo ni former president and possible president ulit na si Donald Trump. Yung scenario na kapag natalo ko, nadaya ko, kaya makagulo tayo. Hindi na yun parang mangyayari. Pero yung mga tungkol sa establishments, hindi ko alam kung nasa ibang lugar lang ako, baka mali ako ng nilibutan, pero wala akong masyado nakitang gano'n. Maski yung mga voting centers kahapon, transparent yung mga, sabihin, bintana sa o kaya ay glass, at hindi naman yung pinagtatakpan. Pero ito ang akin napansin. Kasi kanina, 2 beses ako nag-live from doon mismo sa vicinity o sa compound ng US Capitol. Dahil tinignan nga natin, di ba? Para magandang yun yung background mo kasi baka kung magkagulo, kamusta na ba yung lugar na yun? Napansin lang natin na yung nakabarikada na siya. Sabihin, hindi na, katulad dati, pwede ka pumunta, alam mo, Lourd, din sinasabi ko yung steps doon, di ba? Yeah. Kung saan kapag may ina-inaugurate, pwede, lalalapitan yun, naakit yun, napupuntahan yun. Hindi mo na pwedeng gawin yun ngayon. Hindi ako masagot ng mga gwardiya doon kung ito lang bang week na itong ginawa or kagabi lang, pero sealed off na siya. Pero pwede ka pa rin pumunta doon sa park, doon sa merong body of water. You can still go there, natatakbuhan pa rin ng mga tao doon. Pero yung para makalakpit doon sa stairs going to the yung main building, sarado na siya at gwardyado.
Oo, anong oras yan ngayon, Tito Joey? May mga bars pa bang bukas dyan?
Meron pa. Dito sa hotel ko meron. May bukas pa. Lumabas nga ako kasi maingay. Kaya dito na lang ako sa labas.
Sigurado ako punong-puno yan ng mga Democrats na naglalasing ngayon.
Nako. Sir Jovi,
It's 1:13 a.m. 1:13 a.m.
Aga pa.
Sir Jovi, I just wanted to know, kasi earlier, naglabas itong si Donald Trump. He went on his social media saying, I believe he said, talk about massive cheating in Philadelphia, which we know is part of Pennsylvania, yung isang talagang inaabangan nilang lahat. Are there any more claims by the Republican Party that would be comparable to that?
May mga ganun silang, from the Democrat side ba? Denise, sorry, hindi ko na nag-get yung huling part.
Meron pa po bang similar claims?
Yung sa side nila, sa side ng yung Trump headquarters, suddenly, wala sila mga claims. Masyado ngayong gabi tayo narinig tungkol dyan. At kung doon naman sa Democrats naman, doon sa kampo ng Harris headquarters, ang description ng local media na minomonitor natin kanina pa ay may silence, pero may hope. Pero parang noong mga bandang 12:00, silence. Hanggang sa mag-anunsyo na tomorrow na lang magsasalita.
Oo. Anong oras sarado yung polls dyan, Tito Jovi?
Dito ay 9 o'clock, Lourd, nagsara. At ay makwento ko lang before nagsara dito sa yung binabantayan kong yung binigyan ako ng permit na i-observe at pasukin na polling precinct, yung Martin Luther King Public Library near Chinatown dito sa Washington DC. Napa-evacuate pa kami, pinalabas pa kaming lahat dahil nagkaroon ng bomb scare or nag-threat na meron daw bomba. So, labasan. Siguro mga 15 minutes na antala yung pagboto ng mga Amerikano. Pero bumalik din naman agad after nung scare na yon. Pero yun nga lang, kasama pa, maraming ganyan na hindi credible yung threat. Pero sineryoso, kaya yun yung SOP daw. So, yung ibang state, naranasan din yun. Yung ibang state naman, mas matagal yung pagkaantala. At least dito sa DC, parang mga 15 minutes lang yung naranasan na pagkaantala.
At alam natin, pagdating sa mga balota, iba-ibang states, iba-ibang itsura ng mga balota din,
Pero,
Joey,
going back to...
Iba-iba. At saka yung dami nung what do you call it, ng pages, like, alam ko na sa Los Angeles, up to 6 pages, kasi may mga proposition pa na kailangan nilang sagutin.
Yes, oo. Okay. At least wala yung mga abante, two-rider bisikleta, mga ganyan. Anyway, yung tanong mo.
Hindi.
Wala.
Hindi.
At saka, may isa pa, sorry, Denise, alam ko may point ka, pero sabihin ko lang din, tinatanong ako ng ibang anchors natin kanina para ano yung kaibahan. Almost the same yung pagboto, kasi yung mga machinery natin halos pareho naman. Ang kaibahan lang, siyempre wala yung indelible, walang magiging asul yung daliri mo or yung kuko mo. Sila sticker yung nilalagay na you're done voting. Yeah.
May mga advance votings kasi sila. At yun nga.
Yes.
Si Trump pa yung unang kumukontra noon na yung early voting, feeling niya magkakaroon ng dayaan. Pero siya yung nakikinabang ngayon.
Nakikinabang ngayon, that's
sa early
right.
voting.
Sa nakikinabang ngayon. That's true. That's true. Sorry, Denise, go ahead. Magtanong ka na.
Hindi, sir.
Nakwento ko lang ito ko sa speaker at wala yung maduming kamay. Yeah.
Hindi, sir, kanina yung nabanggit niyo lang about the bombing scare. I believe that was being linked to Russia.
Russia daw
To Russia and the emails being made, though.
Yeah. Nakakatakot na prank call, Lourd and Denise. Pero parang ganun nga, parang yun yung sinasabi ng mga ilang... Comelec ako ng Comelec, pero parang basta yung election officers nila sa sariling mga iba-ibang state ay yan din ang mga deklarasyon na parang nanggagaling daw or linked sa parang Russian movement, yung mga pangtatako o pananakot na yan.
Hindi na kailangan mag-bomb scare ng Russia. Mananalo na si Trump Diba?
Kaya nga.
Nako, abangan natin.
So tomorrow, Lourd and Denise, may mga hindi pa verified pero I think magaganap yun kasi nakita ko yung ibang mga kabataan na pumunta doon sa Howard University. Naglalakad na sila papunta sa mga kung saan sila nakatira dito sa area. Grupo-grupo sila. Pero may mga pasabi na tomorrow ay parang siguro para kalamayin ng mga sarili ay magkakaroon din ng mga activities. And we'll give you updates on that kung ano yung pagpapatuloy ng reaksyon dito. Lalo na pag talagang i-call na ng local and international media yung resulta ng halalan dito sa Amerika.
Nako, talagang unexpected dito, Joey.
Parang masaya sila sa likod ko, ha? Masaya sila sa likod ko.
Mga Russians yun, sumasat ng vodka yung mga yan. Tovarish! Anyway, marami pa sana akong tanong, Tito Joey, pero alam ko kailangan po bumalik. Bukas ba ba yung Green Lantern? Anyway.
Saan yan?
Oo.
Okay.
Anyway, maraming salamat sa iyo, Tito Joey Francisco. Nagulat live mula sa Washington, D.C. Thank you, Tito Joey.
At this point, let's see what's happening across America.
Dumpster fire?
Nako. This is a live stream. Pakita natin the live stream of the Associated Press on YouTube. We can see the electoral map, headquarters of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and live pictures from different states as they count the votes. We also notice the number on AP's electoral map is different from Reuters. Makikita natin dyan, Donald Trump already has 247. Si Kamala Harris has 214 at the moment. And leading pa rin si Donald Trump dun sa isang mga swing states, Pennsylvania, with 90% of its votes already being counted.
Nako.
So mukhang
So yung close na sinasabi nila na bilangan, mukhang bomalabs yan.
oo. Actually, kung sisilipin natin dito, isa sa yung mga inaabangan swing states, Wisconsin that has 10 electoral votes, leading na rin itong si Donald Trump, as well as Michigan that has 15 electoral votes. Yung Pennsylvania nga, 19, yung pinakamalaki, no? Leading pa rin po dyan si Donald Trump. North Carolina, as we know, already went to Trump's side. Ano pa ba yung mga inaabangan natin? Arizona.
Tsaka Nevada.
Oo, yung Arizona po and Nevada.
Minnesota, hindi pa nag-ano, pero ito, mukhang magbublue itong Minnesota.
Yung Minnesota, silipin natin, Lourd.
Of course, dyan
Kasi,
galing si Tim Walz, eh, no?
si Minnesota, leading itong si Donald Trump.
Minnesota?
Check that. That's Michigan that I went to.
Michigan.
Oo.
Yan,
Minnesota,
crucial yan,
leading itong sila Kamala.
Oo.
With, teka, how many percent na ba? With, mababa pa hindi pa na kukuha lahat ng votes eh.
Tandaan po natin mga kapatid, kung sa inyo, ba't parang napakalaki po ng Estados Unidos. Pag kinuha mo yung mapa ng Pilipinas at nilagay mo dito, isipin mo, dalawa yung kanyang time zones. Ganyan sa kalaki. No?
Minnesota, 75% pa lang ang nabibilang. Oo, but again...
Pero mukhang magbo-blue talaga yan. Expected na ba? Pero ito, pag Michigan, Pennsylvania, tapos ang boxing, pag nakuha pa yan, ano?
Oo, malaki yung bilang dun sa dalawang yan. Ano?
Oo, nako, alam mo, interesting ito. Dahil pag si Trump ang presidente, Tita Denise, walang boring moment para sa media sa Amerika at sa buong mundo. Okay, so, to continue, the U.S. Embassy is keeping an eye on the results of the U.S. presidential elections. Ano? And Mobile Journal, Merimon Reyes is reporting to us live from the U.S. Embassy. Merimon, may watch party din ba dyan? At blue ba sila o pula?
Nako, Lourd and Denise, dito tayo ngayon sa Fairmont Hotel Makati kung saan ginawa nga. At natapos nga lang kaninang noon itong watch party for the US presidential elections. Inorganize ito ng US Embassy to the Philippines. And so far, kaninang umaga hanggang tanghali, napuno yung pinaka-grand ballroom ng mga bisita, be it diplomats, political enthusiasts, even mga students, para nga matutukan yung votes turnout sa presidential election. Since mainit at yung tapatan talaga ni US Vice President Kamala Harris ng Democrats at President re-election is hopeful Donald Trump ng Republicans. As of sa pagmamonitor nga natin kanina, tama lamang si Trump sa Electoral College votes with 247, samantala naman si Harris ay mayroong 214 from the states na so far tapos nang bilangin yung kanilang boto ayon sa international news agencies. And sa kabuuan nga, 538 electoral votes ang paglalabanan ng dalawang kandidato, kumbaga dalawang major candidates natin, and mukhang may isa nang lumalapit doon sa 270 mark, which shows na siya na yung magwawagi at mamamahala. Bukod dito, sa real-time monitoring natin kanina, meron ding mga education booths sa paligid nitong ballroom para sa mga bisita na maaring matutunan pa kung paano nag-work ba yung voting rights ng Amerika, election system, party system. Kasi iba nga ito kumpara sa atin dito sa Pilipinas na madaling tignan by popular vote kung sino ang mamamahala. Ayon din kanina kay US Ambassador to the Philippines or in the Philippines, Mary Kay Carlson, whether Republican man or Democrat ang mananalo, pananatilihin pa rin daw ng US ang maigting na relasyon sa Pilipinas and especially sa Indo-Pacific. Supposedly, pagpatak nga ng gabi sa US kung nasaan si Sir Jovi ay makikita na ang mananalong presidente. Pero minsan umaabot pa ito baka a day or two since meron pang ibang mga states na yung inaabangan natin baka meron mga states na mag-flip o babaliktad yung turnout ng votes nila or baka yung iba naman ongoing pa yung pagbibilang ng mga boto. Kaya patuloy pa rin natin tinututukan yung vote turnout dito sa lugar. And so far, sa mga nakita natin, wala pang results sa ilang states including Nevada, Alaska, Hawaii, and yung states kung saan si Donald Trump ay nagli-lead. Pennsylvania, ang North Carolina, nakuha niya na. Ang Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Alaska, leading dito itong si Donald Trump. While in Minnesota, Maine, New Hampshire, si Harris naman ang nagli-lead. Nakuha na kanina, medyo naging celebratory moment kasi malaki ang electoral votes ng California, nakuha ito ni Kamala Harris. Balik sa inyo.
Mabilis lang, Merrimon. Ano pinapanood na channel nila dyan? Fox News ba o MSNBC o CNN?
Halo-halo, Lord. Iba-ibang mga, merong Bloomberg, merong CNN,
Okay.
halo-halong international news agencies, and maraming screens sa loob. Actually, nasa labas na ako kasi tapos na ang watch party kaninang noon. Pero maraming LED screens, pinapakita dito yung iba't ibang mga international news agencies. So, meron tayong nakikita na trajectory from one screen, and then yung polls on the other, and statistics on another. And throughout the day, tuloy-tuloy din yung mga discourses na nandito kanina, mga estudyante, mga political enthusiasts. And nagkaroon din ng conversation when it comes to the difference and potentially the similarities pagdating sa political and election climate sa US and in the Philippines. Balik sa inyo.
Anyway, Merrimon Reyes, alam ko masarap ang buffet dyan sa Fairmont. Pero sana may nagbudmud sila ng mga visa, no? Anyway, maraming salamat ang ating mobile journal, Merrimon Reyes. Alright, this is a special edition of Afternoon Delight, the presidential election results. At wag po kayong BBTO at mukhang malapit-lapit na natin malaman ang susunod na Pangulo ng Estados Unidos. We'll be back after a short break. Please stay tuned.
Will we know who the next president is on election night? Well, it depends. And one reason is that some states take weeks to count ballots. Unlike many countries, US elections are highly decentralized and include long lists of races. Elections for president and Congress, all the way down to local offices, are run by county, town, and state election officials, not by any national election officials. The way we vote can also affect how quickly the results are reported. Even before the pandemic, states started to expand mail voting. The goal was to reduce lines and give voters more options to cast their ballots. These mail ballots are subject to various security checks. Some states require voter signatures or ID information to match registration files. The rules for counting those ballots also vary from state to state. Some states can get a head start by validating ballots before Election Day, whereas other states have to wait until the polls close. In all, 17 states and Washington, D.C. allow mail ballots to arrive after Election Day, while 32 others require they be in the ballot box on Election Day. So if there's a close race and a lot of ballots arrive after Election Day, it could take several days to know the result. This is why election night results are incomplete in most states. For example, if Democrats tend to vote by mail while Republicans vote in person, early results could show an initial GOP lead that inevitably narrows or flips as more mail ballots come in.
Nagbabalik po ang Afternoon Delight dito po sa One News. Special edition ni US Presidential Election Results. Ako po si Lourd de Veyra.
At ako naman po si Denise. Thank you for staying with us. Before we talk about the US elections again, here's a quick rundown of some stories on One News. Typhoon Marce has further intensified as it threatens Babuyan Islands and northern mainland Luzon. It was last located 315 kilometers east of Apari, Cagayan. Signal number 3 is up over mainland Cagayan, while Batanes, Babuyan Islands, as well as parts of mainland Cagayan and Apayao are under signal number 2. Signal number 1 is raised over parts of Luzon. The Office of the Vice President confirms Undersecretary Zuleika Lopez's personal overseas trip from November 4 to 16. The office stressed it was unrelated to her OVP role and that Lopez filed necessary documents approved by the Vice President. Zuleika was among the 7 OVP officials requested to be put on an immigration bulletin order. In its probe yesterday, the House Committee on Good Government flagged over 150 alleged forged acknowledgement receipts submitted by the OVP to the Commission on Audit. The country's unemployment rate has dropped to 3.7% in September. This is down from 4% in August and 4.5% in September last year. Philippine employment rate rose to 96.3% from 96% the month prior. And the Land Transportation Office has presented a company and driver behind the controversial SUV with protocol plate number 7, which was caught using the EDSA busway. The LTO confirmed that 52-year-old Angelito Edpan was driving the vehicle owned by Orient Pacific Corporation. The company has apologized and pledged cooperation with the investigation. Let's now talk to Filipino Young Professional Secretary and Democrat Gabriel Young. Gabe, welcome back to Afternoon Delight.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for having me.
Gabe, so we just want to check in. How are you feeling personally and how are the Democrats feeling about Harris's chances right now?
Firstly, I'm going to say thank you so much for asking me that because I definitely needed this check-in. I have been jumping around from friends, his watch parties, and also friends in my previous life who I've worked in the government with. And while at first we were very hopeful that what we're seeing was the red mirage that happened back in 2020, where that number that President Trump was sitting at 230 was going to be that same number that we would have woken up to Wednesday morning on 2020 and see that the more votes that were counted, eventually President Biden won. But now, at least what we're seeing here, apparently Fox News just called Pennsylvania for President Trump. A lot of friends in the Democratic Party, I live here out in Berkeley, California, which is known to be one of the most liberal cities, one of the most Democrat cities in the United States. And there's a lot of solemnness going on right now, a lot of graveness and kind of how we're feeling back when it was 2016 when Hillary Clinton lost, the sort of confusion of how did we get here again and what does this mean for the next 4 years, especially that we knew the gravity of the situation, yet what we're witnessing is a huge blow to what we saw as the integrity of our democracy.
Yeah, Dave, this is Lourd de Veyra, no? Everyone's saying that what we're seeing now, of course, we can't. It's not over till the fat lady sings or the fat man dances to YMCA. But at this point, everyone's saying, all the analysts are saying that this is a kind of reaction to all the wokeness, supposedly, of the liberal culture that is. And what does it say about the Hollywood establishment? You have high-profile names campaigning for Kamala, but the trend does not seem to indicate going that way.
Definitely, I know what you're talking about in the sense of this wokeness and this over-liberalization, especially in the past 4 years where President Biden really campaigned on not going back and trying to fix everything that Trump did, with a lot of celebrities eventually agreeing, seeing how they were benefiting from the large economic growth that we saw under President Biden. And I say that economic growth very empirically and factually, as many economists have reported out how the United States economy has grown and inflation has shrunk to 2%. But what we're seeing in terms of this liberalization and this wokeness is that there were a lot of things that the Democratic Party has failed. And even me as a Democrat, I will admit, the Democratic Party has failed me as a Gen Zer too. The Democrat Party tends to tokenize us Gen Z youth and say that the youth will get out the vote. The youth are the future, and all the memes will really cultivate that culture that Trump will lose, when in reality, the Democratic Party failed to acknowledge the realities of our situation. The realities that the war on Gaza was really hurting people. The rise of racial ethnic violence across the country, the inability to solve racist attacks and keep people feel safe, let alone solve the arguments of the economy about inflation and the war in Ukraine, and just everything that culminated in an economic externality and stress upon us United States constituents. And so maybe this is another blowback, just as we saw in 2016 when the Democratic Party really pushed Hillary Clinton onto us rather than Bernie Sanders, who was that really radical perspective that Trump also gives as well. And so while I still, again, holding that, I'd say 5% of me that is still hopeful that, hey, maybe I can wake up tomorrow morning and maybe that 10% of ballots that weren't counted in Pennsylvania yet might flip the tide. I am now starting to work on processing about the failures of what just happened the past few years and what that means for us as political operatives moving forward.
Gabe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there are around roughly 1.7 million Filipinos in California. You threw this question out there just a while ago. What are the main concerns of the Filipino community? What do they want addressed? And what does the trend mean in the current elections? What does that mean for the next 4 years?
Absolutely. So AAPI data, standing for Asian American Pacific Islander Data, and Asian Pacific Islander American Vote, APIA Vote, recently released a survey in September surveying the Filipino-American community on their interest and if they voted in September, who would they vote for? And surprisingly enough, 68% of Filipino Americans said that they were going to vote for Kamala Harris, with another 14% for Trump, and then the rest, I believe that was a 4%, 5%, as an undecided or an other candidate. And so with that in mind, what was at the forefront of those Filipino Americans voting for Vice President Harris was, one, reproductive rights and freedom, especially in the pro-choice, pro-life movement. The second one being the economy. The third one being foreign affairs. Fourth being healthcare. Fifth being immigration. And all of these issues, all stemming from the fact that Phil-Ams are predominantly in all of those sectors, tended to, while again in this survey, while it was 68% for Vice President Harris, a lot of Phil-Ams still tended to side with President Trump. And I will also put it out there that even my own uncle and my own family is one of the leaders of the Phil-Ams for Trump fans. And so while it has made an upcoming Thanksgiving dinner very awkward, it really has shown us the reality of the situation that while me as a Gen Zer, I may be for Vice President Harris because my issues being reproductive rights or my own community, especially all my friends, and then also transgender rights, but then also the economy where I felt I was benefiting. I can go to Tesla and buy a Tesla and get $7,500 back in a tax rebate because of the Biden-Harris administration. But knowing and going forwards, I can't really put that same faith into the upcoming administration, whereas my uncle out there really believes that he, despite not hitting that tax bracket, that the tax cuts that Trump is proposing, he believes he's going to benefit. And so really, it's those 5 issues. Again, economy, immigration, foreign affairs, healthcare, and reproductive rights are just everything that is on the table for Phil-Am.
Yeah. One of the surprises, Dave, you mentioned reproductive rights, and one of the surprises that everyone thought that abortion was going to be a big talking point, a big issue. It turns out the numbers don't speak that way, no? But Dave, it's gonna be an interesting Noche Buena table this December. I really think. So what's the next? I just want to press you on that thing you mentioned earlier about the
Please do.
Tokenization of you as American Filipino. How does that exactly work? I mean, can you give us certain specifics?
Absolutely. So, for viewers who are also wondering about what tokenization is, it is this term that's been coined from academic diversity, equity, and inclusion spaces, talking about how institutions, whether that be the government, whether that be schools, whether that be companies, really highlight their quote-unquote diversity by pushing the racial ethnic minorities to the forefront, or even doing hiring practices based on that. And for the record, I'm not talking about affirmative action, which is an entirely separate issue, but more so, let's say if someone wanted to apply to, for me, I go to UC Berkeley for my master's. If someone wanted to apply to UC Berkeley, tokenization in this case would be UC Berkeley putting me on the brochure and saying, look, Asian Americans can thrive here. And so I essentially become the token, and if you will, the model minority. And what has been seen though is this tokenization and this model minority status and myth is actually really false. It's a myth, as I was alluding to, because when we break down the data, for example, we recognize that East Asian Americans, and I'm not throwing my other Asian American brothers and sisters on the bus. For the record, I'm Chinoy, so I also count as Chinese, but like Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans, Korean Americans, they all tend to do well because of this model minority myth and the investments in said community or their immigration status. We take a look at Cupertino, for example, and Apple. Most of them are Chinese American wealthy families, and they can send their kids to good schools. But when we look at Filipino-Americans, let's take a look at Cerritos, California. They don't have that same income investment into the property taxes that lead to good schools, and therefore those students end up not going to the great schools, and that doesn't continue that cycle of generational wealth accumulation. And so overall, where I'm getting at is that the Democratic Party tends to tokenize those voices, whether that be racial minorities or even the youth like myself, and really just push that at the forefront of the messaging and showing that this is the future, when what we're seeing tonight, it might not actually be. However, I will say as well, there is power though in, I'm not going to say us tokens, but more so us minorities and us youth actually giving rise and voice. And there's a study by Pew Research saying that by 2040, the United States isn't going to be a white majority anymore, but people of color are going to make that majority. However, what we see is in the next 16 years, with 4 of it being a part of this 16, a lot of that progress to reach those conditions of equity and equality to make sure that tokenization doesn't exist anymore in 2040 might be very much hindered because of the divisive and exclusionary policies that might come with another Trump administration. So I know I answered your question in tenfold, but there's so much at stake now that we have to prepare ourselves for an incoming Trump administration.
Gabe, we've been talking about Pennsylvania and how crucial that state would be, it being one of the swing states and one of the biggest electoral votes. But what other key states is there to watch, and how big of an impact will they have if Pennsylvania's trend continues and goes to the Republican side?
So here is the very dreary reality that I'm about to express, is that in the current situation, former President Trump has won Georgia and he's won North Carolina. And by winning Georgia, North Carolina being 16 electoral votes, Georgia being, give me one sec, let's see, my computer decides.
16 as well, yeah.
Say another 16. So that's 32 already there. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the 230 number that before Georgia and North Carolina was called, that would have put him at 262. And then plus with another swing state maybe, that would have put him over that 270 mark. And so if Pennsylvania has gone again red, that'd be that 32 plus 19 being 51 and putting President Trump at 281. And so the sad reality of the situation is if Pennsylvania has gone red, then unfortunately Vice President Harris has lost. And there is no such state that she can win now that can allow her to come back if Pennsylvania goes to President Trump. So even if in Nevada it goes blue, in Arizona goes blue, Wisconsin, Michigan, they go blue, all those votes still will not amount to that 51 that President Trump has accumulated from those three key swing states.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's more of a time of accepting the reality, but again, I am 5% naively hopeful that maybe a miracle will happen overnight. And I'm not saying I'm pushing the narrative of maybe votes will come out overnight, like conservatives say, but just the hope that every vote will be counted and that our integrable election process will come to fruition.
Dave, you deserve a very, very big drink. And I just want to ask...
Unfortunately, I don't really drink much, but
Oh, man.
I'd be happy to have a good halo-halo or sagot kalaman with you sometime.
It's not too late to start learning. But I just want to ask about, let's say, the uncles. What is their issue against Kamala Harris? Is it an issue of gender? Is it an issue of, I mean, have the uncles imbibed that sense of, she is not of our, let's say, race, not of our tribe, not of our, group? Is there an othering that happens?
Yes, absolutely. And however, I will not just pinpoint it on the titos and lolos out there and manongs, because I also do believe there is our conservative sect of titas and lolas out there who are voting conservative and voting for President Trump. And the reason behind that all, and I primarily go to social media for it, I look at my uncle's post still, and also to the Asian Journal Phil-Am targeted op-ed that Vice President Harris put out. And even though Trump didn't put one out, Vice President Harris got a lot of bashing on that op-ed from the community, primarily because of one common crucial factor, which is Catholicism and religion.
I see.
And so a lot of people have really pushed out that, just as we saw at Madison Square Garden, that Tucker Carlson and the other conservative personalities said that they have framed Kamala Harris as the Antichrist, primarily for the single issues of supporting LGBTQIA plus rights, particularly for gay marriage, or even supporting pro-choice movements, which people immediately assume that if you're pro-choice, you mean you're pro-abortion, which, again, that's false logic that goes down that line. And then also that she is not Catholic herself, or she supports drugs, or she supports a lot of law, or a lot of crime and rampancy, when in reality, that's not true whatsoever. And we see our community being very divided on Facebook forums, on Instagram comments, showing that, again, for people who want to pursue that knowledge of caring for one another as the golden rule that Catholicism puts out there for us, that Kamala Harris's policies allow for that opportunity economy, allow for the care for the other person, and allow our community to even be seen. However, it is still that dominant factor of Catholicism being ingrained into Filipino psychology, and eventually, when people immigrate, Filipino-American psychology and sociology, that being Catholic then gets associated with Filipino identities. And so it's very hard for titos and titas who are first-gen immigrants to really break apart from that. Yeah. However, one thing that I'd also like to introduce as I cap this off is the second gens, like myself and the youth, that a lot of us, after exposure to different philosophical topics, the critical thinking education system here in the United States, that we ourselves tend to sometimes distance ourselves from Catholicism and reshape our identity to be more American, and therefore the Filipino-American identity comes from. And so what we see is that intergenerational gap of titos and titas tending to vote more conservative, but us youth tending to vote more liberal because of our separation of religion with our own identity.
Yeah, Dave, before we say goodbye, as you wake up to that new orange dawn, you deserve a big drink again. And a halo-halo.
Thank you.
Halo-halo.
Maybe one day you and I can share it. But thank you so much for having me. And I wish you all a very good luck to the next 4 years under this big orange dawn as well.
All right.
Thank you once again. That was Filipino Young Professional Secretary and Democrat Gabriel Young. Okay, you're still watching Afternoon Delight on One News. Time for another breather, but we'll be right back.
November 6th, 1860. Abraham Lincoln, a former Illinois congressman who opposes slavery, wins a four-way race for president. After his victory, southern states begin to secede from the Union. The American Civil War breaks out the following year. 1854. John Philip Sousa, the king of American march music, is born in Washington, D.C. 1893. Composer Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky dies in St. Petersburg, Russia. He was 53 years old. And 1931. Movie and stage director Mike Nichols is born in Berlin. Among his films, The Graduate, Catch-22, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and The Birdcage. Among his Broadway shows, The Odd Couple, and Monty Python's Spamalot. Today in History, November 6th. Tim McGuire, The Associated Press.
And we're back. You're watching Afternoon Delight. Ako po si Denise Tan.
Ako naman po si Lourd de Veyra.
At this point, let's take another look at Reuters electoral map. You see it there. Parang halos hindi pa rin nagbabago.
Alam mo, subukan ko nga
I-refresh.
I-reload ko nga.
But we do know for a fact, ito pong areas na to, like Pennsylvania, Michigan,
Wala na yan.
Wisconsin, lahat po yan leaning towards the side of the Republicans. Sila po ang lamang dyan. And we have just Minnesota. Ito, wala pa, hindi pa umiilaw.
Wala
Yung
pa.
Minnesota is for the Democrats. Yan lang yung asul sa parting ito. Yung mga blankong yan na hindi pa natin nakikita.
Oh, so medyo may mga sabit. Yung isa naman, yung isang professor, si Alan Lichtman, na sinasabi na Nostradamus of US polling, predicted this one going to Kamala. malabo. Yung mga dito, yung mga Democrats na naglalasing na yan sila ngayon. Oo. Pero dito naman, nagse-celebrate sila, nagpapasabog sila ng mga shotguns sila. Tsaka AR-50. Oo. Tapos, tumutugtog ng mga banjo. Anyway.
Oo. But again, regardless, no, kung saan pumunta yung when we spoke, if you just tuned in, we spoke to Gabriel Young at maganda yung explanation niya, Lourd, na regardless kung saan pumunta, yung swing states na inaabangan natin, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Philadelphia, hindi na eh. It wouldn't add up because North Carolina already went to the side of Donald Trump as well as Georgia.
Medyo matatapos na yung boxing. Ano? At walang nag-predict. Alam natin close, pero sinasabing ang prediction magiging close and everyone was expecting a repeat of 2020. The year 2000. Bush versus Gore na talaga nagkapit-pitan, umakyat pa hanggang korte. Pero dito ngayon mukhang smooth daw kasi yung naging eleksyon eh. At magkakaroon lang ng gulo pag natalo si Trump.
Ito mukhang walang gulo dahil may mga nagse-celebrate. Actually, ito, silipin natin what's happening from the live stream of the Associated Press. Actually, kanina, like what I mentioned on top of the coverage, the supporters and the team of Donald Trump already, may mga tumatalon-talon pa, already jumping and celebrating.
Si Elon Musk yun, tumatalon-talon.
Tumatalon-talon.
Yung mga ilang pulgada lang na talon niya. Of course, si Elon Musk ang isa sa mga biggest supporters ni Donald Trump. At ang Washington Post na pag-ari ni Jeff Bezos, hindi naglabas ng endorsement. Commonly, nag-endorse sila ng kandidato pero wala naman daw talaga epekto yung mga endorsement ng mga Washington Post, New York Times.
I mean, we saw a lot of big celebrities endorsing Kamala Harris, but so far, right now, 248 electoral votes for Donald Trump as opposed to 214 for Kamala Harris. Tapos again, those swing states na inaabangan ng Democrats leaning towards the side pa of the Republicans.
Alam mo, itong recent mga phenomena na ganito, interesting to eh. Ganyan sa Pilipinas din eh. You had celebrities going for Leni Robredo, no?
Ang dami,
Pero
actually.
iba.
Oo.
Pero pagdating sa endorsements sa ibang sa mga produkto, etc., these are the people you hire, people you pay to endorse something. Pero pagdating ba sa usapin ng politika, hindi sila maniniwala sa kanila. Interesting lang ito.
And it's going to be an interesting next few days. For everyone who's tuned in, again, One News will be bringing you U.S. presidential election results in the next hour, so stay tuned. For now, we say thank you for keeping us company this Wednesday. I'm Denise Tan.
Okay, this is a rolling coverage, kaya tutok lang kayo mga kapatid. Maya-maya Storycon comes to you live with Ed Lingao, Ronald Llamas, and Amy Pamintuan. Ako po si Lourd Veyra. Magbabalik po ang Afternoon Delight. 2:00 bukas. Until then, we're making the afternoon great again. Have a delightful afternoon.